How do you control anger? There's two aspects. One is in the moment, and the other is, in general, to prevent the moment from arising. And both of them need to be done. Because, yes, you can keep working with anger in the moment, but ultimately the real solution is to work with what's causing it so that it doesn't keep coming. So as long as it keeps coming, you work with it in the moment, but you also work with that which is causing it. So the root cause of anger is two things. Number one, unfulfilled expectations. That's what we're angry about. We have an expectation. Let's say I hire you for a job, and I say to you, okay, I want you to do this job, and I, interview lots of people, you're the most qualified, you have come into the interview, you've said, I'm the man for this job, so I trust you. I have what you could call an expectation that you're going to do what I've asked you to do. Then you don't do it. I'm furious. Situation one. Why? Because I expected that you would do it. Situation two. I cannot find anybody who's prepared to do this job. I'm in the grocery store buying apples. I see you. I say to you, do you want to make a few quick dollars or a few quick rupees? And you say, oh, not really. And I say, well, come on, anyway. And I force you to do it. And as I describe the job to you, you say, I'm really not the guy for the job. I don't know how to do that. I'm not interested in doing that. And I say, well, that's all right. Just try your best. And now you don't do it. Chances are I'm going to be much less angry in the second situation, simply because I didn't have as much of an expectation. I knew from the beginning, you're not interested. You can't do it. You never promised me that you could. So I have less of a cause of expectation. So anger stems from us having an expectation. We expect that the world and all of the people in it should act in a certain way. Namely, the way we want them to act. That's the general expectation. People around me will do what I want them to do. Not because I've pushed them into it, not because I've employed them, not because I've paid them, but because it's the right thing to do. See, this is the game that the ego plays. What I want, how I think, is right. I want this because it's right. I'm telling you to do it like that because that's the right way. Very few people have enough insight to say, well, basically you could do it anyway. But I've got this really, sort of pathological attachment to it being done in a specific way. So would you mind humoring me and doing it my way? Very few people have that level of self-insight. Most of us think that how we want things done is the right way. And so when they don't get done like that, when people don't respond, act, live, speak, treat us the way we want, we get angry. Whether it's the stock market, whether it's traffic on the freeway, whether it's our loved ones, whether it's our neighbors, whether it's our elected officials, whoever it may be, we have an expectation and it's unfulfilled. That's the root cause of anger. The other root cause of anger is literally something as simple as habit. If you were born and raised in a family in which people did not have control over their anger, and so there was a lot of anger, lots of shouting, chances are that's going to develop in you simply as a habit. That becomes your learned response to the world. And I come from an academic background of psychology, and 25 years ago, when I was studying psychology, when I was in therapy and studying to give therapy, from both sides, the teaching was, you better let out your anger, that the only way to deal with anger is to let it out. Express it, get angry, punch pillows, hit blow-up dolls, hit punching bags, get out that anger. The Indian tradition is different, and interestingly, in the last 25 years, Western psychology has kind of come to be much, much closer to what the Indian tradition is, which says the more you get angry, the more likely you are to get angry. That literally you are laying what here we call sanskaras. In the West we talk about, neural networks, neural patternings. You're literally laying a habit. This is how I respond. I get angry. So contrary to the beautiful idea that anger were something like food poisoning, that you could just vomit up and then feel better, actually the more you let it out, the more your brain, your nature says, this is how I deal with the world. I yell, I scream, I hit things, I throw temper tantrums. So those are really the two causes of anger. For the second part, for the habit, the only thing to do is literally stop allowing yourself to act in anger so that you lay a new sanskara, you lay a new pattern, you lay a new neuronal network. Come up with something different. I jog, I paint, I sing, I hug trees, I meditate, I cook. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Whatever works for you. But something to lay a new habit so that instead of I shout, I hit, I fume, it's I garden. That's what I do. And in terms of responding to the expectation aspect, this is really something that we need to look at. Because not all of our expectations are so superficial. Sometimes they are. Sometimes it's, you didn't do the dishes, you didn't cook the way I wanted, you didn't clean your room, you didn't do the report, you didn't speak to me the way that I wanted you to speak to me. But sometimes it's deeper. We have an expectation that our spouses won't cheat on us. We have an expectation that our parents won't abuse us, that our spouses won't abuse us. We have an expectation that our house won't burn down. We have an expectation that our elected officials will rule with justice and integrity and honesty. So these are deep things. These are expectations that we all have. But what's important to remember is that we have no control over anything in the outside world. And that sounds very depressing, but it's actually very freeing. Because it's the myth of having any control that makes me angry when it doesn't happen. So for example, take something like the weather. Okay, we all have weather that we prefer. Some people prefer sun, some people prefer clouds and rain, some like the hot, some like the cold. We all have a preference. But very few of us has the delusion that we actually can control the weather. And so for example, if it's too hot and I don't like the heat, I may be uncomfortable, but I'm not going to be angry because I never really expected the weather to do what I want. If I planned a picnic and it rained, I might be disappointed. But again, I'm not going to be furious because I never really believed that my picnic was what determined whether it rained or didn't rain. So the anger that comes from this delusion that we have some level of control of the world around us. And this is the most important thing to give up. You have no control. Not over the people around you, not over the weather, not over the stock market, not over the traffic. The only thing you have control over is your own self. And so if you are dissatisfied, the answer to that dissatisfaction is within. If you are upset, the answer to that upset is within. It doesn't mean that everybody around us does the right things. It doesn't mean that we have to love what everybody does. It doesn't mean we have to say, that was so great, could you just cheat on me again? I loved it so much the first time. But it means that we recognize that the answer to my anger, the answer to my pain, is not in another person, it's in myself. It's how I've responded to what that other person has done. And so how can I let go of these expectations? And that's the work. That's the work, is we let go of them. We may still have a preference, sure. I prefer that, people don't beat each other. I prefer they don't beat me. I prefer that people don't cheat on me or lie to me or steal from me. I have a preference, sure. Like I would prefer the weather to be a little cooler. But I don't expect it to the level where if it doesn't happen, I'm furious. Because I know I don't have any control on the people around me any more than I do on the weather. And so that's sort of an inoculation against anger. If you never really expected somebody to do what you wanted. And it's the last point on this, though, is that doesn't mean that we go into our relationships resigned. Oh, well, I can't trust you because I can't expect that you're going to be loyal. It's not that. It's, I trust you. Even though I don't have any expectation, I trust you because I feel your heart. I trust you because in trusting you, I grow spiritually. I trust you because in that trusting, I'm able to love. And the love is the most important thing that we need in our lives. And so even though I don't have an expectation, nonetheless I trust. Or even though I'm not attached to the expectation, nonetheless I trust. And then the last part is what to do when you get angry. Okay, so you had an expectation. You were attached to the expectation. They didn't fulfill the expectation. Now that wave of anger is coming. This is when you simply need to employ tools. And different tools work for different people. One of the most powerful tools is the breath. If your breath is low and deep and slow, you cannot simultaneously be furious. You can't do it. You also simultaneously can't be stressed out. The mind, the brain, and the breath, and the heart rate, the pulse, the blood pressure, all of that actually are very interlinked. To the point where if I gave you a pill that made your heart start beating really fast, your brain would get nervous, even though there was nothing to be nervous about. But the cues go both ways. Brain gets upset, heart beats fast. Heart beats fast, brain assumes there must be something to get upset about. It goes both ways. So if you can bring your breath slow and deep and long, you will pull yourself out of the heart-pumping, blood-rising, sweaty palms, sympathetic nervous system overload, I'm going to kill someone experience. It'll also pull you out of the stress response. It'll pull you out of anything that later you think, oh my God, what happened to me? It keeps you conscious. So the breath, first and best tool, just literally bring the awareness right here in the abdomen. It expands, it contracts. If you can do that, you pull yourself out of anger in that moment. Then take a walk. Drink a glass of water. There's a beautiful saint who says count to 100. I mean, figure out what works. There's dozens of different things you can do. The point is simply to keep yourself from reacting for long enough so that when you do, you're able to respond with a cool head, consciously, rather than in the unconsciousness that happens when anger overtakes us. The stuff that makes us repent the next day or an hour later. Doesn't mean that we love everything, doesn't mean that we condone everything, but it means when things happen that we don't condone, that we have the ability to respond to it consciously, rather than being the slave of anger.